There was a man sitting in my chair. Not a guest. Not a friend. Not a repair guy or a neighbor looking for his lost cat. Just a man. Legs crossed. One arm draped over the backrest like he owned the place. The kind of posture that says, "I've been here before." I stood in the doorway, groceries still in hand. The bag tore slightly under the weight of 2 mini-can soups I had no intention of eating. One rolled across the floor and stopped just short of his shoe. He didn't move. He smiled. "You're home early," he said. I stared, blinked once, twice. My lips moved, but no words came out. I glanced around the apartment. Kaya wasn't in the living room. Her laptop was closed. No music playing, just the faint hum of the fridge and the man's breathing. "You are?" I finally managed. "Comfortable," he said. "You?" I dropped the groceries on the counter. Soup cans clanked like warning bells. This wasn't just weird. It was wrong. "Where's Kaya?" I asked. My voice cracked. I hated that. "Bathroom," he said casually. She needed a moment. You know how emotional these things can be. I didn't know. He looked familiar, and not in the usual, "maybe we went to high school together" way. More like, "I've seen your face where it didn't belong." And then it hit me. He was in her photos. The work ones she posted on LinkedIn. Standing just off to the side during launches, awards, team drinks. Always just far enough away to look like a coincidence. Until now. Now he was in my house. I walked closer, trying to appear calm, even as every cell in my body screamed, "What the hell is happening? What exactly are you doing here?" He reached over to the side table and picked up a coaster. Set it down. Lifted it again. "You know," he said, "Kaya told me you'd react this way. That you'd play the quiet guy. The nice guy? The guy who tries to stay civil while everything burns down around him." My throat tightened. "You need to leave." He tilted his head. "Why?" "You're not going to do anything. You never do." And then I heard it. Her voice. Soft. Behind me. "Ernest." I turned. She was standing at the hallway's edge. Barefoot. Her makeup smudged in a way that didn't look like crying. She didn't look surprised. Not at all. She looked resolved. Like she'd already made peace with something I hadn't been told yet. Something I was just now beginning to understand. This wasn't a confrontation. This was a handoff. And I was the last to know. Kaya didn't say anything at first. She just stood there in the doorway like a painting someone forgot to hang. Frozen, misplaced, and unfinished. I waited for her to laugh, to say it was a prank, a weird team-building exercise from her office full of creative types. But the silence between us grew heavier, like someone slowly filling the room with water and daring us to keep breathing. The man in my chair, leaned forward now, elbows on his knees, like a coach giving a pep talk before the final quarter. He didn't look nervous. He didn't look guilty. He looked entertained. "Kaya," I said quietly, "can we talk alone?" She nodded, slowly, and yet, she didn't move. Instead, she looked at him first. She looked at him first, like she needed permission. I didn't explode. I didn't shout. I didn't throw anything. I just walked into the kitchen, pulled out the drawer with the tea towels, and slammed it shut again. It's pathetic, I know. But when you're someone like me, someone who avoids confrontation, who negotiates with vending machines when they eat your dollar, sometimes a slammed drawer is a rebellion. She finally followed me, arms crossed like she was cold. But she wasn't. She was never cold. She ran warm all the time, like some internal fire no one else could touch. "Kaya," I said again, still barely able to form sentences. "Why is he here?" She didn't answer that. Instead, she said, "You weren't supposed to be home yet." That hurt more than anything. She didn't say, "It's not what it looks like." She didn't say, "Let me explain." She said I messed up her timing, that I'd interrupted something I clearly wasn't meant to see. The strange man was still sitting in my chair in the next room, probably texting someone, probably admiring the view from our fourth-floor window like it was his. I stepped closer to her. I didn't yell. I just asked, "Who is he?" Kaya's mouth opened, then closed. She looked down, looked back at me, and finally said, "Galen." "Right." The name again, like a recurring virus. "I've heard you mention him before," I said. "From work, right?" She didn't respond. So I asked again, quieter this time. "What is he doing here, Kaya?" Her voice was thin, like tissue paper. "He just needed somewhere to go for a bit. It's complicated." I laughed. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so incredibly absurd. "You let a man you work with just sit in our apartment? Without telling me? Without even asking? He has his own key, Kaya? Silence. That told me everything. I walked past her, into the living room, and I looked him in the eye. You need to leave. Now. He stood up slowly, brushing imaginary lint off his sleeves. Then he looked me up and down, not with anger, but with pity. That made it worse. All right, he said calmly. If that's what she wants. He looked to Kaya again. And Kaya? She didn't say a word. I felt like I'd been body slammed without anyone touching me. He walked out. Just like that. Calm, composed, victorious. And Kaya just stood there. After the door shut, there was a silence so sharp it hummed in my ears. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I just stared at the door, half expecting him to come back and tell me it was all a test. That I'd passed or failed. Something. But no. It was just me. And Kaya. And the smell of that same damn candle. Burning quietly in the corner of the room like it knew exactly what it had witnessed. I finally turned to her. You're cheating on me, I said. She didn't deny it. She didn't cry. She said, it's not that simple. But it never is it? I didn't sleep that night. I lay in our bed staring at the ceiling while she took the couch. Not out of guilt, but because she knew I wouldn't leave it. And sometime around 4:17 a.m., I realized something that made my blood run cold. This wasn't new. This had been going on for a long, long time. And I was the last person in the world to know. The next morning, the world looked exactly the same, which somehow made it worse. You'd think after your marriage implodes in the quietest, most gut-wrenching way imaginable, the sky would at least try to reflect it. Go gray, maybe drizzle a little, throw in some dramatic thunder for flair. But no, it was all sunshine and chirping birds while I stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing out a coffee mug that used to be hers. She had one of those don't talk to me until I've had caffeine mugs like she was the CEO of sarcastic mornings. I held it in my hands for too long. Then I put it back in the cabinet upside down. Kaya hadn't said more than 10 words since last night. She didn't apologize. She didn't beg. She just existed quietly in the same space as me, like a coworker you don't particularly like, but still have to sit beside. At some point around 10 a.m., she left to clear her head. She didn't say where. She didn't offer a return time. I sat on the couch. The same couch she banished herself to the night before. It still smelled like her. Not in a sweet, nostalgic way. In a way that made my stomach knot up and my palms go cold. I hated that I still loved the scent of her shampoo, even when I couldn't look her in the eye. That's when I noticed it, her laptop. Left on the end table. Unlocked. Now listen, I'm not proud of what I did next. I wish I could say I hesitated. That I wrestled with my morals. But no. My hands moved like they had a mission long before my brain caught up. I didn't even breathe. Just opened the lid and started clicking. I wasn't looking for anything specific. Just proof. Something real to pin my drowning thoughts to. Something that would confirm I wasn't losing my mind or inventing drama where none existed. I checked her email first, nothing unusual. Then Slack, same. But when I opened her messages app, that's when the world tilted. There wasn't a message from Galen. There was an entire thread. Dozens of texts. Weeks old. No cutesy nicknames. No hearts. But that made it worse. It was casual. Like this had been normalized between them. Like I had simply missed the memo that their relationship had evolved into. Whatever it was. But one message stood out. Dated 2 weeks ago. He still thinks we're just friends. It's kind of sad. There it was. The confirmation. The pity I'd seen in Galen's eyes. The reason Kaya couldn't look me in the face when he sat on our couch. I had been reduced to a background character in my own marriage. A punchline in someone else's private joke. And then I found the photo. One attachment. One single, blurry, low-lit photo of Galen and Kaya at a rooftop bar I'd never been to. She was leaning into him. Eyes closed. His hand was around her waist. Her ring was still on. I sat there for a long time, just staring at the image. Not moving. Not crying. Just emptying out slowly. Like a leaking faucet that no one notices until it's too late. By the time Kaya returned, the laptop was right where she left it. I was sitting at the kitchen table, hands folded, pretending to scroll my phone. She didn't say anything as she walked in. Just tossed her keys in the bowl and went to the bedroom. She didn't know what I had seen. Not yet. And for now, I wanted to keep it that way. Because something inside me had shifted. The man who slammed drawers and whispered questions was gone. In his place was someone quieter. More dangerous. Someone who could smile through betrayal and collect evidence like a detective in his own life. She thought I would explode. But I wasn't going to scream. I was going to learn everything. I didn't confront her that night, or the next one, or the one after that. I just watched. It's strange how quickly you can train yourself to disappear in your own home. You stop making noise when you walk. You stop asking questions. You time your movements to avoid eye contact. Learn to anticipate the sound of footsteps so you can slip into another room before they reach you. You become the wallpaper, just another background pattern in someone else's life. Kaya barely noticed the change. Or maybe she did and chose not to comment. Either way, we fell into a rhythm that looked normal from the outside, but felt like something very old and very rotten was decaying just beneath the surface. We ate dinner in silence, slept on opposite ends of the bed, shared space like two strangers who'd agreed not to acknowledge the war happening between them. But I wasn't idle. I was observing. She started dressing differently when she left for work. Not drastically, no plunging necklines or stilettos, but carefully, thoughtfully, like every layer was curated for someone specific. I noticed the perfume she wore had changed too. Not stronger, just sharper, more precise. Then there was her phone, always face down, always on silent. She'd leave the room to take certain calls, go onto the balcony or into the bathroom, whispering just low enough that I couldn't make out the words. I didn't press. I didn't follow. I just took notes, mentally, physically, even digitally. I set up a keylogger on our shared iMac. I started syncing her phone's cloud backup to a dummy account I created under a fake name. I told myself it was just to understand, to see the full picture. But a small, guilty part of me knew I was collecting ammunition. And then something strange happened. One night, I saw her crying. She thought I was asleep. It was around 2 a.m. I heard the soft creak of the bathroom door and the faint sound of sniffling. I waited. When she didn't return after 10 minutes, I got up quietly and walked down the hall. The bathroom light was on, the door slightly cracked. I peeked through. She was sitting on the floor, knees hugged to her chest, wiping tears from her face with the sleeve of the hoodie I bought her last Christmas. Her phone was on the edge of the sink, unlocked, the screen still glowing. And Galen's name was there. But the message didn't make sense. You said you'd talk to him by now. Followed by, you're dragging this out. It's not fair to either of us. Her reply, moments earlier. I need more time. He's not who you think he is. Not who you think he is. That line haunted me for the rest of the night. I lay there staring at the ceiling, just like I had before, but now my thoughts weren't filled with heartbreak. They were filled with suspicion. What did she mean by that? What did Galen think I was? The next morning, Kaya was back to her robotic self. Calm, composed, mascara perfect, toast untouched. But I looked at her differently now. Not as my wife. Not even as the woman who betrayed me. But as someone keeping a secret from everyone. And for the first time in this entire spiral of shame and confusion, I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was curious. I decided it was time to stop reacting and start acting. If Galen thought I was just some doormat, fine. Let him. If Kaya thought she could keep up this double life under the safety net of my silence, fine. Let them both underestimate me. Because I had a plan now. It started with a name. A real name. Galen wasn't his real name. And once I found out who he really was, the entire situation shattered like glass. It started with a last name. Kaya never said it aloud, not once. Not even when she mentioned him casually in the past. Galen from Creative, Galen had this idea. Galen's team's behind on assets. Just a first name, always dropped like a marble in a conversation, meant to roll past unnoticed. But people leave traces. Even the ones trying not to. I went through her emails again. Deeper this time. Into folders she didn't use much. Archive things. Shared calendars. Eventually, I found it. One internal invite to an off-site creative retreat 6 weeks ago. The guest list included a Galen R. Cressman. I copied the name into a browser. Nothing. No LinkedIn, no social media. No mentions on the company website. No photos. Not even a scrap of digital existence. At first, I assumed I got it wrong. Maybe a typo. Maybe he used an alias for online work. But something about the absence was too clean. In 2025, even fake influencers with 43 followers show up in some Google search. But this guy? Zero. So I dug deeper. I used a tool a former client once gave me access to, something borderline legal, a background lookup platform for vetting logistics partners. I wasn't supposed to have access anymore, but the login still worked. I searched the full name, tried every variation. Eventually, I found a Cressman that used to live in Baltimore. Same age range. That profile was connected to one other alias, Gideon Race. That name gave me something. An arrest in 2016. Nothing major, fraud charges, all dropped. But then I found a Reddit thread from 4 years ago. Someone asking if Gideon Race was a real person. The thread got removed. Quickly, but not before a cached version turned up in a dark corner of the web archive. It mentioned a man who embedded himself in startups, lied about credentials, assumed vague creative roles, and disappeared once things got messy. Race was described as a chameleon, always charming, always untraceable, always getting too close to someone high up before things fell apart. It sounded more like urban legend than biography, but I couldn't shake the feeling. What if Kaya wasn't cheating with just some arrogant coworker? What if she'd been pulled into something way more dangerous and didn't even realize it? I copied everything, every link, every document, every thread. I created a folder on a flash drive, encrypted it, and taped it to the underside of my desk drawer, just in case. I didn't know what I was preparing for, but the air in our apartment had shifted. It no longer felt like I was trying to salvage a broken relationship. It felt like I was preparing for war. And then, Kaya started acting nervous. Not guilty, not secretive, nervous. Her hands shook when she poured coffee. She double-locked the door at night, which she never used to do. She flinched when her phone buzzed. And twice, I caught her looking over her shoulder while walking down the hall to our building. I didn't ask. I didn't let on that I noticed. Until Tuesday night. She walked in late, hair wet, wearing a jacket I hadn't seen before. Her eyes scanned the apartment like she was expecting someone else to be here. When she finally sat down across from me at the kitchen table, I didn't speak. I just waited. After a long pause, she whispered, "You don't know who he is." I looked up, keeping my expression blank. "I don't know who you are anymore." She winced, like the words physically hurt. But then, she leaned forward, her voice shaking. "If he ever comes here again, don't let him in." The silence after that was suffocating. My pulse spiked. I wanted to ask 100 questions. But I knew, if I pressed now, she'd shut down. I could feel the shame radiating off her like heat. So I nodded, just once. And she got up, went to the bedroom, closed the door. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with the lights off, watching the street below from the 4th floor, wondering who else had looked up at our window. Wondering what Gideon, whatever his name was, wanted from her. From us. From me. This wasn't about cheating anymore. This wasn't about romance. This was something else entirely. Something I was only just beginning to understand. And when I found the USB drive she had taped behind the bookshelf the next morning, my heart stopped. Because it had a different name written on it. Mine. It was tucked behind the 4th book from the left on our lowest shelf. Not the one Kaya usually reached for. That's why it struck me as deliberate. A beige USB stick, no label, no brand. Just one of those off-market drives you pick up at a gas station or trade show. I didn't recognize it, which meant she hadn't intended for me to find it. Or maybe she had. I stood there for a while, holding it in my hand, the cheap plastic suddenly heavy, like it had absorbed the weight of everything unspoken in our apartment. The strange part wasn't that it was hidden. It was that she had written my name on it. Not Ernest, like she usually did in notes or birthday cards. But Ernest. All caps, black Sharpie, printed with surgical precision. Not affectionate. Not personal. It felt like a label you'd find on evidence in a police file. I stared at the bookshelf for another 10 minutes, like it might open up and explain itself. Then I plugged the drive into the old laptop I kept in the closet, air-gapped, never connected to Wi-Fi, the one I used for freelance side projects when I didn't want to be tracked. Kaya didn't know that laptop existed. The drive contained only one folder. Do not ignore. Inside, 3 files. A TXT document titled Read This First. A video file named entry_04_final. MOV. An audio recording called emergency_only. MP3. My pulse was hammering by the time I opened the text file. It was written like a confession. But not to me, to anyone who found it. The language was formal, not her voice. It read like someone who was trying to frame a narrative in case something went horribly wrong. If you're reading this, it means I either lost control of the situation, or I finally got brave enough to admit I never had control to begin with. I met Galen, real name unknown to me, through a networking event hosted off-platform, unofficially, with no HR oversight. That should have been a red flag. But I was drawn to him in a way I can't explain. It wasn't romantic at first. It was ideological. He talked about systems, about power structures, about how real change always happens from the inside, quietly, patiently. He called it soft collapse. I stopped reading. What the hell was soft collapse? I'd heard of quiet quitting, corporate sabotage, whistleblowing, but this sounded like something else. I scrolled down. He told me that most companies, governments, institutions, they don't need to be burned down. They only need to be leaned on, nudged, until they rot, until the wrong people rise, the right ones leave, and the structure folds under its own weight. No alarms, no explosions, just silence. He said I was a perfect candidate, that I had the reach, the trust, the positioning. All I had to do was plant the seeds, move the right files, push the right narrative, discredit the right voices, delay key decisions, reframe problems. I felt physically sick, not because I didn't believe her, but because I did. I remembered her company going through layoffs 6 months ago. 3 VPs pushed out under vague restructuring, project delays that didn't make sense, security updates that never got deployed. She was always overwhelmed, always staying late, always looking more and more hollow. She wasn't just having an affair. She was being used. The final lines of the note stopped me cold. He said if I didn't comply, he'd ruin me. But if I told anyone, he'd ruin you. I'm sorry, Ernest. I know you're smarter than I gave you credit for. I know you're watching. I just hope you know, this wasn't about cheating. It never was. If you still want answers, play the video. It took me a full minute to move the cursor. My hand was shaking. I double-clicked the video file and turned the screen away from the window, just in case someone was watching from outside. Paranoia wasn't a theory anymore. It was policy. The video opened to a dimly lit room. Looked like a hotel or rental apartment. Kaya sat at a table, visibly exhausted, hoodie up, circles under her eyes, voice raw like she'd been crying. There were timestamps, but they didn't match anything on her calendar that I could find. She stared directly into the camera. Ernest, she whispered, if I disappear, don't go to the police. Don't go to my company. Don't talk to Galen. He's not who he says he is. He's not even using his real face anymore. What did that mean? She glanced to the side, like someone was in the next room. Don't try to be the hero, she said. Don't try to fix it. Just leave. Get out. Go where they don't know your name. Because if you dig any deeper, they'll come for you too. The video cut out. No fade. No end card. Just black. I sat frozen. The air felt too still. I could hear my own breathing like it belonged to someone else. And then the apartment buzzer rang. 3 times. Sharp. Precise. Like a signal. I didn't answer it. I stood in the kitchen with the lights off, holding the USB in one hand and the unplugged laptop in the other, waiting to see if the footsteps would follow. They did. Soft. Measured. Up the stairwell. Past the 2nd floor. Then the 3rd. Then silence. I didn't sleep that night. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a trap. And I had already stepped too far in to walk away clean. I didn't leave the apartment the next day. I didn't shower. I didn't eat. I just sat in the center of my living room with every light off, the laptop screen dimmed to its lowest setting, curtains pulled halfway shut, not enough to look suspicious, but just enough to kill reflections. I was spiraling, and I knew it. But when your wife admits to infiltrating her own company on behalf of a man who may or may not be real, and then warns you that faces aren't what they seem anymore, spiraling becomes more like protocol. The USB drive sat beside me like a loaded weapon, unplugged, but somehow still humming in my mind. I hadn't listened to the audio file yet, the one labeled emergency_only. Part of me didn't want to know what counted as an emergency anymore. I wasn't sure if the bar had already been passed, or if it was still coming. Instead, I opened my notes app and started mapping out everything I knew. Names, dates, locations, odd phrases Kaya had used in the past, corporate changes that didn't make sense. When I stood back and looked at it all, rows of notes, timelines, and screen grabs from that old Reddit thread, a shape began to form. Soft collapse wasn't a theory. It was a blueprint, and it had been used before. 3 companies in the last 5 years, one in Chicago, one in Austin, one in Montreal, had experienced massive internal breakdowns. Not scandals, not breaches, breakdowns. Systemic failures caused by vague culture issues, sudden resignations of key staff, permanent project delays, and irreconcilable creative misalignments. The companies didn't vanish. They just rotted, quietly, from the inside. Each one had something in common. A mid-level employee who didn't make sense. Someone with no real online presence, vague credentials, and a reputation for being brilliant but difficult. They always entered through referrals. Always left without notice. No lawsuits. No press. Just absence. In the Austin case, the employee's name was listed as G. Race. Same spelling. Same age bracket. No trace afterward. I cross-referenced all three events and found something else. Each company had an internal reshuffle about 6 months before the collapse, initiated by someone in strategic communication, the exact same department Kaya worked in. And in all three cases, after the collapse, a shell company scooped up the remaining IP and infrastructure for pennies. The same shell company, Lacuna Phase Holdings. I stared at that name for a long time. It felt corporate, vague, perfectly meaningless. But when I tried searching it online, I found nothing. No website, no phone number, just fragments and financial filings. It existed legally. It paid taxes. It had registered agents in 6 states. But it wasn't real in any way I could interact with. And Kaya? She'd been targeted by them. That much I knew now. Whether she joined them willingly or under pressure, I couldn't say. But the video, the message, the fear in her voice, none of that was performance. She was scared, and she was trying to tell me something that couldn't be said out loud. So I finally opened the audio file. It started with nothing, just static. Then, her voice, whispering, close to the mic, almost frantic. Ernest, if you found this, you're already too close. You need to disappear. Not run. Disappear. They're not watching you because they want to catch you. They're watching because they're deciding if you're useful. My heart was in my throat. They don't come for you. They come for your job, your name, your patterns, your sense of reality. They'll start small. Emails bouncing, accounts locking, friends turning cold. You'll question yourself. Then they offer you clarity, but only if you surrender something. She paused. They offered me a choice. I said yes. I thought I was helping dismantle corruption, but I wasn't. I was feeding it. I don't even know if this is winnable anymore. There was a long silence. Then the last line. If Galen finds you before I do, don't listen to what he says. He doesn't want you dead. He wants you obedient. The recording ended. No goodbye, no signature, just that awful, clinical click. I sat there in silence, unable to move. I looked around my apartment like I might suddenly spot a camera in the vent or see a shadow where it didn't belong. I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know if Kaya was still alive. I didn't even know if I was safe leaving the building. But I did know one thing. They thought I was alone, that I was passive, that I was the man who froze in doorways and slammed drawers like it meant something. They were wrong. I was going to find her. I was going to burn Lacuna Phase Holdings to the ground, one cold, quiet piece at a time. But first, I needed to disappear. Erase myself. Because from this point forward, I wasn't Ernest anymore. It took me 9 days to disappear. Not physically, digitally, emotionally, socially. I erased myself from my routines, one quiet action at a time. Canceled my utilities. Transferred my savings. I closed my work contracts under vague claims of health issues. Deleted every social media account I ever touched. I even wiped the old laptop with a kill switch script I downloaded off an old prepper forum. But the most difficult part wasn't logistics. It was walking past Kaya's framed photo on our bookshelf for the last time, knowing I didn't hate her. That was the strange thing. Even after everything, her secrets, the manipulation, the lies that stretched like spider webs across our entire marriage, I didn't hate her. Because in the end, she didn't sell me out. She warned me. She gave me the tools to fight, to escape, to know. And when I think back to her shaking hands and tired eyes and the way she whispered through that audio file, like someone was already listening, I think she was trying to save me before she saved herself. I left the apartment at 4:43 a.m. on a Wednesday. Quiet street. No traffic. No one standing in the shadows. No black vans or surveillance drones. Just me, a backpack, and a prepaid phone that would self-brick after 3 failed unlock attempts. I went somewhere rural. I won't say where. Somewhere with trees. Real ones. Somewhere you can hear birds instead of sirens, and the loudest thing in the room is the refrigerator trying its best. And for a while, that was it. I read books again, slept with the window open, took walks that led nowhere. Let my nervous system relearn what safety felt like. The world didn't end. The company didn't collapse. There were no news stories about Lacuna phase or soft collapse. But I knew that was the point. It never ends with a bang. Just silence. But then, about 3 months in, something changed. I was sitting in the back corner of a small cafe, off-grid, no Wi-Fi, mostly frequented by fishermen and retirees, when a young woman walked in, maybe late 20s. Black coat, ball cap, too warm for the season. She scanned the room with the kind of glance that's trained, not curious. She didn't look at me. She ordered tea, sat near the window, pulled out a book. The cover made me freeze. It was a beat-up copy of Brave New World. But there was no title on the spine, just a single sticker on the back. That symbol. I'd seen it before. In the metadata of the video file Kaya had left. Hidden deep. Invisible unless you were actively searching. She didn't look at me. Not once. But when she left, she accidentally left a slip of paper on the table next to mine. It had only 2 things written on it. You weren't a target. You were the insurance. She's safe. I didn't chase her. I didn't need to. I knew. In that moment, Kaya had found a way out. She'd survived. Maybe even beat them from the inside. Or maybe she joined something else entirely. Something working to stop this kind of thing before it devoured more lives. All I know is, she was alive. And she still cared. And she'd kept her promise, to protect me when the time came. The relief didn't come all at once. It came in small doses, like how you slowly realize your nightmares aren't real after waking up. It took me weeks to accept it. But once I did, something softened in me. Not forgiveness, but peace. Now, I live differently. I don't use my real name. I write code for open-source privacy tools under an alias. I send encrypted messages into places I hope she still reads, hoping one day I'll get a reply. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. But I'm alive. I'm free. And for the first time in years, I'm not just surviving. I'm starting over. They tried to erase me. Instead, I erased them. Softly. Quietly. And this time, they never saw it coming.